and we're here to share a lot of information to people. I mean, hardly you see realtors that do this because most realtors just keep their things to themselves. They don't show their team. But I really want to do this for my people, buyers to really encourage them and make them feel, know what's ahead of them before they even get into it. So, as we go ahead, I'm going to share my screen and just show us something real quick. Then I'll go into my presentation. 1 second, please. Oh, when I pulled that up. So this is a buyer seminar whereby we'll be talking a lot about the process, A to Z. What do you do? What's the first step? What do you do first? How do you get into this? Because so many people think that they can't buy a home. They have a lot of thoughts, a lot of mindsets. So we'll be sharing a lot of information. So I have my team, I have a lot of people on board that will be talking to us. They will be sharing a lot of information with us. So let's go right into it without wasting much of our time. So today, we're talking about first time home buying process 101. What are we gonna learn? What are you gonna learn today? Number one, you're gonna see step by step home buying process, how to qualify, how to secure finances. You're gonna see like tips to avoid costly mistakes. You're gonna see insider strategies to win in today's market. And also you would see that what happens during inspection period. So many people have questions on that. You see what happens during inspection, what you should be looking forward to. And you see what happens at the closing table. How do we get you to the closing table? Because that's the goal. The goal is to get you to the closing table because we have that's like our motive to get into the closing table. So in anything we do in life, I mean, you should have a why. Why are you doing this? Like, it's the why that will push you. What's the reason behind getting a home, buying a home? And I just have a few things here, which is, of course, you want to have stability, you want to have security, you want to be able to be in a neighborhood for as long as you want. If you have younger kids and you want them to grow in that neighborhood, maybe you like the school, you don't want the landlord to just come up one day, oh, I'm selling my home. You have to move out, you have to do this, you have to do that, or I'm increasing the amount, the price. You want something stable. And also, you want to build equity because owning your home is going to build equity. It's going to really build the equity. You're going to have, you know, money piled up as the year runs. Just imagine people that bought homes in 2020, now their home has really gone up. In fact, in New Jersey, homes have really gone up by 20%, 20% from since 2020. And also another benefit, another why is tax advantages. There's so many tax advantages while when you if you own a home. And the last one is like long-term investment. This is like an investment. You're investing into real estate, which is does not depreciate. Mostly real estate appreciates. It grows. Your money grows. It's like you're keeping your money in a safe, which is also growing. So tonight we will be looking at 6 easy steps to home ownership. Number one is to hire an agent. That's the first step. Hire Adewale Adedran. That's the first step. All right. That's number one. Hire an agent, get an agent, And number two is the secure, financing. Um, secure, you want to be able to secure financing. I'm gonna have, my brother talk about that. Number three is you find the right home. All these points, we're going to touch on them. I just listed them right here. So we will touch on each one. Number four is to make an offer and negotiation. Five is to get home inspected and negotiate repairs. And why six is to close and to become an homeowner. All right. So number one is to definitely hire an agent. You want to hire an agent. Number two is to secure finances. So I put here, right? Would you walk into a luxurious store ready to buy without knowing your budget? Yes, you could, but it wouldn't make sense if you actually plan to buy something. You wouldn't walk into a Gucci store or not knowing your budgets or not knowing what you have in your pockets. In fact, if you really plan to buy that gold watch, and you just walk in there with, you would want to plan ahead. You want to research. You want to go online to know. So the same applies to home buying. You want to prepare everything. You want to know how much you can afford before you go out there to search for a home. And this is the point I'm going to bring up Jimmy, the mortgage, to tell us and talk to us about the pre-approval process. What do you need? How do you do it? What you really need to get pre-approved.
Hey, thank you so much for the opportunity, man. Thank you all for attending this Zoom meeting. So essentially, when it comes to getting a mortgage, look, if someone is giving you or institution giving you a percentage of money, they're going to want to verify how much you earned at the same time how much you can afford. Now, risk is involved. At the end of the day, you just have to make sure you're comfortable spending that amount of risk given to you. So throughout the pre-approval process, you had this conversation with me. I will tell you your max budget, but I also will be comfortable with you spending your comfortable budget, right? Which is more important because the last thing we want to do is have you live in check to check. So part of the process of going through the pre-approval process is simple. You need to be working for more than 2 years. You need to have a risk profile over 600. Now, in some cases, yes, 580, 590, that works. But keep in mind, the lower your risk, the higher the rate. And so we need to make sure we jump ahead of it. This is why we have these conversations in the beginning. So when you do apply for a mortgage, it's available to you at a decent rate. Rate is quantified by your credit score. It's always going to be the case. So the goal is for you is to get the higher credit score to get into the mortgage. Now, keep in mind, there's also down payment assistance, which some may qualify for, right? So there's income restrictions. Each down payment assistant is targeted for certain individuals. So therefore, have the conversation and I will lead you into that direction. So when we're asking for a pre-approval, it's simple. We're asking for pay stubs, pay statements, your last 2 years. And keep in mind, if you went to school for 1 year and you're studying in that subject matter, we can use your school year for that year to qualify. So that's a good thing because you're studying for that. Why not give you credit for it, right? And at the same time, if you have student loans, although you are in deferment, that's still considered liability. There's a factor that we use. I will go through that individually, not right now, as you go through the process. We see how much you are with your credit. So, in other words, if you have a $500 credit limit and you have 499, that's not good. What typically happens, we want you to stay under the 30% threshold. So you really want to stay under $200 when it comes to your credit usage. Now, some will say we can just vanish and do a rapid rescore. All these things are applicable, but keep in mind there's a cost behind it. I'm giving you the playbook without you spending additional funds. For reasons we have these conversations in the beginning. So when you get to that point, you're not spending more money. Many will say it's easy to get a pre-approval, blah, 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 blah. Yes, but what happens is I don't want to surprise you guys with a closing cost. There's a fee for everything if you don't jump in front of it. Going back to the pre-approval process, I ask where your money's coming from. If you're getting down payment assistance, I will ask that you have a certain amount in your savings to qualify for it. If you have too much in savings, believe it or not, you're not going to get down payment assistance. That makes sense, right? Why would you have more and ask for money? It's not going to work. So when we go through the process, we ask about that. Then we ask for your last two W-2s. Now, if you went to college, we would ask for your transcript the year before with your W-2 set aside. Once you give me those informations, I speak to Adewale. I give you assumptions based off of the town you're looking for. Keep in mind, New Jersey is notorious for their taxes. For reasons, I need to make sure whatever you're qualifying for, that it makes sense for you so there's no surprises. We want to manage those expectations. Once that happens to me, I verify the information you gave me. I give you a pre-approval letter. And to be honest with you, it's the key to home ownership. Once you get that pre-approval letter, that's the path for you to decide what you want to spend, where do you want to live, and how comfortable you spending that money every month. That's it.
Thank you for that, Jimmy. Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, you hit it all. That's it. Like, it's the confidence you need. We need the confidence. If you go out there, you want to know that this is the amount that you can afford. If you can afford 550, you don't want to be looking at houses in the range of 700. It's just a waste of time because, after you looked at the house, you put so much emotion into that and you find out that you can't afford it, then you have to, do the cycle again. So it's important to first do the first step. The first step is to get pre-approved. Know the amount that you can qualify for or that you qualify for that you can really afford to buy. And that confidence comes that, okay, this is the amount I can afford, as Jimmy said, and this is what I can spend every month, or like this is how much my mortgage is going to be, and things like that. So after that, after you get pre-approved, we now know. Then we go out. That's the point. I come in again. I go out with you. I'm gonna be with you throughout the process from A to Z. I go out with you to see these houses that falls into the range of the amounts that you qualified for. And after that, we find the right houses for you, the right house for you. We put in an offer. The next one is to put in an offer for you, because I put that together. I put the offers together. I submit the offers to the listing agents. Of the listing agent sees that offer. We also put some terms, contingencies to protect you as a buyer, to make sure that you are not being swinged over during these transactions. So we do a lot of work. So because we hear so many people saying that they can get rid of realtors, but in the right sense, there are some things that you can negotiate. But we professional, we're able to negotiate that with the seller, with the listing agents. We're able to do that negotiation for you. And after the offer is accepted, we get accepted by submitting an offer. The next step is, to start. Oh, you found the right house, but it doesn't end there. There's a step to that. After you find the right house, the offer has been accepted. So the next step would be inspection. You have to do an inspection. You have to inspect the house, because you can see a house, you can go into a house and see the house and see everything looking good, but this you can't see everything. You can't see everything. You can see with your eyes, but a professional, an inspector will be able to see what you cannot see. And that's why I'm gonna have my brother here, Brian, to talk to us about inspection process and how we do what we do. What should buyers be looking forward to during the inspection process? What happens during the inspection process? Over to you, Brian.
So I just want to thank you for having me, inviting me to talk amongst this panel of other industry leading professionals. So just to introduce myself real quick, my name is Brian Diaz. I am the owner and home inspector of Palace Home Inspections. I've been doing this about 8 years now. I have over 3,500 inspections on my belt. Now, our host had said two important things in his last sentences, right? One was that he's there during the entire transaction, and the other one was about the contract terms, right? So, as a home inspector, I show up very like in the middle, right? You guys have the entire once you get pre-approved with Jimmy Mortgage, then you go through the attorney review, get your offer accepted, then I come in the middle. So, in that period of time of your inspection contingency, I don't go off of what the contract was accepted for. For instance, you may want to not limit inspection, right? Or in order to make your offer more appealing, you may limit it to structural, environmental, mechanical concerns, or things that like you may limit cosmetics. So even if something gets pointed out that's cosmetic, you don't care about that, right? Everybody's in their own position when it comes to purchasing a property. I don't go off of those contract terms because at the end of the day, I'm there to teach you about purchasing your property, right? Like, what is it that you're getting yourself into? I provide general home inspections, which for those of you that don't know, a general home inspection is practically a visual, non-invasive evaluation of the property, which means that on the day of the property, that's the condition that we're going through. We won't be causing damage, meaning that I'm not going to have to break a wall open. Uh, but we're still going to do a thorough evaluation. So in the general home inspection, we check your roof for its material conditions. We're going to go on the exterior of your property where we check the siding, the windows, the foundation, the grading, any kind of vegetation or anything that could have a harmful effect to the property or ways that water can get to the property. So once we get to the interior side, this is where like it takes a little longer because now we're going besides the interior finishes of your windows, your walls, your doors, your floors, your ceilings. We'll also be checking the structural and foundation from the lowest point of the property, which is most likely the basement, or in cases where there's a crawl space or slab on grade, we're still going to check the structural systems in the foundation, all the way up to the highest point, which in any case is usually the roof, right? So once we go through the structural foundational components of the property, we're also going to be going through your electrical components, your heating and cooling components, and your plumbing systems as well. So that's all part of your general home inspection, which again, you would want someone to do a thorough job. In my reports, I provide you with pictures, comments, whether they're maintenance, recommendationals, or safety items. I highlight and color code them so it's easily identifiable. But besides your general home inspection, there are other services, especially when you're purchasing certain properties in New Jersey that you're going to want to consider. Not many people think of, especially New Yorkers. I'm from New York. I got my New York cap on, and I'm still living out here in Jersey, right? So, with that being said, in New York, we didn't necessarily worry about oil tanks the way that they do in Jersey. So, those of you who aren't familiar, you have options for your fuel source, right? Whether it's natural gas, propane, or a lot of cases, oil. It was very common that properties, older houses, used oil as their fuel source. So we thought it was a good idea to bury it down in the ground, not realizing that, water and cast iron or steel doesn't really mix. And then eventually the tank rusts and it starts leaking, which becomes an environmental hazard, which can be costly to remediate. There's oftentimes that people don't even know they have one. They have purchased a property, they didn't do a tank sweep, or they purchased it years ago, forgetting about it. Then when it comes time to the transaction, that could put a lot of things at hope because the property may sound perfect, report may come out clean, and then you decide to do the tank sweep service just to find out that there's a buried oil tank, and then now it becomes a headache of who's going to be responsible for it. Oftentimes, when in your inspection contingencies that you put things like that. So God forbid something is brought up during the inspection process, at least you're covered. In the contract, it will say that environmental reasons like that are going to fall on the seller, or it could be a cause for you to back out if the sellers aren't willing to take care of that. But at the end of the day, I'm not here to negotiate. I'm just kind of here to talk to you about the condition of your property. So besides oil tanks, another common inspection that a lot of people consider, are starting to consider now, are sewer scopes. Sewer scope is, for lack of a better term, a colonoscopy for your house, right? Um, we have a specialized camera probe in which we insert down the main sewer line. We do a complete inspection, visual camera inspection of the sewer line from your house to the city tap. Now, the reason we do that is because, again, often places in Jersey, you don't know that you're responsible for your entire sewer line, whether it be 10 feet in front or 100 feet in front. You're still responsible for that entire duration. And again, not many people are prepared for that. So when you purchase a property, again, you're buying an older house that's been renovated, but they may have not touched the sewer line. So you go in thinking, okay, like everything's pretty on the inside, inspection report came back clean. Now you have a water backup from the sewer line because you decided to opt out of the sewer scope and nobody knew what the condition was. Whether it has roots growing in, there's cracks or breaks, or there's improper materials that as a nation we no longer use anymore that can cause just nightmares and headaches for you down the line and it's expensive repairs. In all my home inspections, I do provide something called a termite inspection or wood destroying insect inspection, which is exactly as it says. We look for wood destroying insects, things that can cause damage to the property, whether it be termites, carpenter ants, carpenter bees, powder post beetles. The list goes on and on, but you always want to get that as part of your home inspection. And as well, a lot of areas too who aren't familiar with radon. Radon is a natural odorless, colorless gas that's emitted from the dirt. It's radioactive, and with high concentration levels it is hazardous. So with there's a basement, you're always going to want to test for it. And oftentimes too, again, depending on the house you're doing, if you have a crawl space that's vented inside the house versus outside, you're going to want to do a radon test. A lot of areas, they don't necessarily have a radon problem, like let's just say Jersey City, Newark, East Orange, a lot of where like the hotter markets are. But regardless, you would still want to do one just to cover yourself. God forbid something was high that does fall on environmental. And again, it's a cause for remediation, and that could be something that's negotiated for. So, yeah, that's it. Thank you, guys.
I want to jump in. So what Brian mentioned with pet inspection. This is very important because if you're a VA, with when it comes to applying for that loan, the fact that Brian is giving it to you, so he's jumping ahead of it, right? He's giving you that information. It is required when you go through a VA loan that you get a pet inspection. A pest inspection will definitely help you get closer to your mortgage process. It's always required when you go through a VA loan. So thank you, Brian, for including that with your package because again, what Brian is doing is he's closing the gap on any conversations that can happen because he's giving you everything up front so that when you go through the process of the mortgage, there's no concerns. Because Brian doesn't know if you're a VA guy or VA gal, right? Brian is just doing his due diligence to make sure you're comfortable spending X amount of dollars for the house you're about to buy. So the fact that Brian is putting this information in front of you is a testament to saying, here it is, and this is what home ownership looks like through the inspection process. So Brian, thank you for including this with your package.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. I mean, for so many people that might not know what VA loan is, I mean, what's can we talk about that a little bit?
So VA loan is when you have part of military, Air Force, um, military, Air Force, and what's the other one again? Army,
Um,
right? And so if you served our country within whatever format to protect us, we given the fact that you applied for a VA loan. And this is always available to you no matter what. As long as you've been part of and you've been dishonored with respect, you'll always be applicable to a VA loan.
yes, thank you so much. Thank you for that. Yeah, so we as we are like moving forward with the process. Now we have the inspection, the reports. We went back to the seller, to show them that, okay, we found these things. Can you tell your client, and show this to your client. Can they fix it? That is where I come in. I negotiate that with the listing agents to have a conversation with the seller. um, so after that, when both parties comes into an agreement that they can decide to fix, and they might decide not to fix, they might want to sell it as is. Some properties might be sold as is. Some property might be like, okay, the seller might be generous and be open to do some repairs and fix some things. But there are some things that they have to fix if those things are hazardous, like they are harmful to the health. They have to like definitely look into that. So from there, after that, then we see that the next step would be to continue with the loan process. Now it's like our legs are in the water. Now we are getting ready to get this house. So, but there are other steps to look into, which is like I will go to the next step would be the um what's it called, the appraiser. We have to get an appraiser for the home, which I think which I would have Jimmy to talk about that a little bit. Like what should we be expecting with the appraiser? Who covers the appraiser cost? And what should the buyer be looking forward during the appraisal process?
Yeah. So the appraisal process is simple. It's part of knowing how much the house is worth, which is your report. There's a fee. It's anywhere between five to $625. You pay for that. It's part of your closing cost. In the end, that number gets subtracted because you are paying to get it done. Um, so what happens is you get the appraisal report because the lender who I represent wants to know how much the house is worth. So keep in mind, your appraisal price is different from your purchase price. I'll give you a good example. If the home appraises for 610, but you're buying the house for 620, you got to make up the difference of the $10,000 because you're buying the house for the purchase price. The lender is only going to give you money based off the appraisal value, which is the 610. When you're working with professionals like Adewale, when you submit an offer, he's going to make sure there's comps to support what you offer in order to help make sure whatever the appraisal comes in, it's in line with the value of the purchase of your home. So it's always important. Um, if you feel you're going to pay a little bit more for the home, the comp is supported through the different sales, which Adewale will provide. The appraiser, an independent vendor, will go in and verify that information. It's important for the lender, the bank, whomever you use, to understand what the value of the property is. Once that's established, you go to the next steps, and that's when you have that wonderful conversation with Leslie. She goes through the process of making sure that things are done. You don't speak to her specifically, but you communicate through your lawyer and Adewale to make sure things are settled for reasons when you get to closing, there's no surprises.
Thank you so much. I mean, that actually takes us to where Leslie comes in. So I think, I mean, we already introduced Leslie, so I'll just hand it over to Leslie to tell us what happens during that process and how to, I mean, what happens on the closing table. Over to you, Leslie.
Thank you, Adewale. And thank you, Jimmy, for that nice segue. Guys, my name is Leslie Sanchez. I'm with New World Title, and we are a very reputable title company, and we actually are based in multiple states, New Jersey being one of them. But actually, I want to take it a step earlier in the process too. So actually, right after attorney review is truly when we come into the picture, mainly because it is quite important to get the title searches done as soon as possible. So the title searches are really what's going to help us at the title side uncover what's going on with the property. It's going to be anything that's been recorded, but also anything unrecorded. So we have, you're going to see in your closing documents, title search fees, but also municipal search fees. And an example as a recorded lien would be a mortgage, for instance. So that's something that would pop up when we have a title search. Another thing might be if, the homeowner has not, the seller has not paid their taxes, for instance, that might be a property tax lien that we might uncover. All of these things are to truly protect the future homeowner, which is the buyer, because every lien or every fee that's associated right now and kept with the property, it gets transferred to the next owner. And that's something that, of course, we do not want to happen. So the title company does all of that research to make sure that the new owner does not absorb any of those fines, any of those fees. So that's truly the big importance of our role. And during that process, if we do uncover anything that needs to be taken care of, we work, with the seller's attorney. Everybody's pretty much kept in the loop through emails and phone calls, with all of the attorneys involved to make sure that we are squared away and that we can pretty much close at the targeted closing date that we're all shooting for. So depending on what that looks like, because it does change from, case to case. If we're looking to close a lot faster, for instance, I'll work with Adewale. We can rush the searches. There's fees, of course, incorporated with that. But it is possible to do. Our title company has great relationships with all the local municipalities, which also is very important because we can get, things done rather quickly. We can pick up the phone and we can call the people in charge directly and get to the top of it if we need to. The other thing is, of course, our relationships with your realtor, in this case, Adewale, but also the attorneys, right? Communication, I think, is sometimes the biggest driver to delay a closing, just because, people are checking out quickly. They don't get back to the other person. They take days to respond. And I really think that's why it's important to work with a real estate agent who has such a strong team, not just from the title side, but also, from the lender side, because that means that Adewale can really get answers quicker than anyone else who maybe doesn't have that type of relationship. So then once we kind of go through that process, clear all the issues from the title sense, once we're at a place where we're nearing clear to close and we're getting excited for the closing table, that's when the title company is working with the lender a lot more. we're balancing the numbers, making sure that everything lines up so that there's no concerns, no, anything that wouldn't line up for how much money is due at the closing table. So those numbers are really, really critical. Once we have that squared away, we can schedule from the title side, we can schedule the closing. So depending on wherever it's convenient for the buyer, we have offices in New Jersey, but if for whatever reason, maybe, the buyer needs to close closer to their house or to their workplace just based on their availability, we can also send a notary to go directly to, the best location possible. That notary will bring all the closing documents with them, and that way it can be done pretty much at the buyer's convenience, which is great, even after hours, like after work hours, which is also great. And then finally, of course, at the closing table, one of the biggest things from a title standpoint, probably the largest line item that you'll see at your closing documents is title insurance. So if you're financing, there's actually two forms of title insurance that you'll have. So you'll have your lender's title policy, which is required should you have a mortgage. And then you'll have your owner's policy. That's optional, but truly it's extremely critical. That's something that you'll only pay one time at the closing table, but it's going to cover and protect your home ownership during the entire time that you have your property. That is why it is extremely important. What it will help to do is should there be any, errors during the recording of not just this transaction, but previous transactions that may have been missed, the insurance will essentially help protect you and your home ownership. Also, if there's been liens that did not record during the time frame from the period you went under contract till the closing. For example, contractors have mechanical liens that they can place into your property even after closing. And that could be something that's dealt with the previous seller. That in title insurance policy will help protect you from anything like that as well. And last but not least, not as common, but it does happen, inheritance claims. So there may be an inheritance, claim from somebody from a previous, sorry about that, guys. Put myself on do not disturb here. So basically, should anyone in the past come back, and say, hey, this property is actually my great grandfather's or something along those lines, and they have legal rights or they claimed to have legal rights to the property, that title insurance will essentially come into play to protect you as well. So that's why it's truly important and capturing that as part of your purchase as well. But at the closing table, once everything is signed, you'll work with your realtor, Adewale, to make sure that once everything clears from the funding standpoint, you get the keys to your wonderful house.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, Leslie, for that. Follow-up question that I would ask is because I know some might have questions, and we're almost rounding up. So please, if you have questions, just write it down. If you have questions for Jimmy, you have questions for Brian, you have questions for Leslie, we're gonna address everything. So please write your questions down. We're gonna have open questions. So if you have questions, just raise up your hands. I'll put it in the chat and we would address them. So for Leslie, right? Follow-up questions that I would ask is like the closing table, because that's the day that we know that people are always excited to get to. Is he just signing? Do people just come and just sign papers? What kind of papers do they sign on that day?
So all of the documents actually will not be the first time that they're seeing those documents. When there's a mortgage involved, it's a lot of documentation from the lender side, of course, but those, again, Jimmy, in this case, will be providing in advance. If there's questions, those should be addressed and discussed prior to the closing table so that there isn't any surprises, right? The attorney also, of course, will have access to all some of the closing costs, and all of the documentation that's shared with the title by the title company. So that again is something that the attorney would work directly with the buyers to make sure they feel comfortable. So that, again, there's no surprises at the closing table. So a lot of the bulk when you're financing, a lot of the bulk of the paperwork is going to be the mortgage side. all the documentation, what it means, what you're essentially agreeing to, the payment structure, and it's really relevant to what Jimmy has put in place for that specific buyer. You're going to have the rates, like all of those things. And then the closing costs, of course. So that's considered the HUD or the Alta. People use different terminology for it, but basically it's just going to outline exactly what the buyer is paying for, all these fees, their attorney costs, the title fees from the lender side, all of the lender fees, title insurance, like we had just talked about. And so all those numbers added up, deducted by any of the deposits that the buyer may have already sent in advance during the process, it'll be deducted. And so all the numbers will make sense for the buyer at that point.
Thanks so much. Thank you very much. So this is actually I mean, I would say it is personalized by each person or group of people that want to buy. So yours might be different, mine might be different, so it's always personalized, right? So yeah, I said it from the beginning. I was like, as a realtor, as a professional realtor, I'll be with you from the beginning to the end. So that means from the beginning of even thinking about it, having the thoughts to buy a home, to the point of the hand, now to the closing table, handling the keys to you. I think we have a question in the chat. I'll read that, which says, what is the minimum? One second. What is the minimum and maximum range for the closing cost?
That's a good
Anybody?
question. So closing costs is anywhere between 2.5 to 3% from the loan value. Reason being is because your attorney fees, as a lender, we have to escrow 2 months of your taxes in addition to the quarterly taxes you have to pay. So a total of 5 months collected up front, followed by the attorney fee and followed by any other fee. The only fee that you don't pay for at closing is the inspection fee, which is collected by Brian in the beginning. Everything else will be applicable at closing. The fees that we charge, the points just in case that is part of your closing costs, right? I'm using the words hyphenated just in case because some people can close with no points, but this is all case by case. Points meaning the cost you would pay for the mortgage. So be careful. What someone gives you in the beginning may not be what someone gives you at the end. It's important for you, with a trusted mortgage advisor like myself, to go through that with you because these numbers do change, and it's important you understand that because what you have may or may get you to closing. And I want to be careful. I've seen these things happen before where someone thinks they're getting something good, and when they get to closing, I didn't know. You did know, you signed for it. You just were so happy about it. You were in your emotions. You didn't understand at the end there was more proceeds needed to go to closing. So again, you have to be mindful. You are responsible, but at the same time, you got to work with professionals like us here to explain to you what that looks like so you don't have any surprises. We here are managing those expectations.
Thank you, Jimmy, for that. I don't know are you clear about that? That's good, right? I think that was very good explanatory. It's personalized. You have to like work with your professionals. You talk to them. So this process is not a process of getting started. I'm gonna work alone, do my thing alone. You ask questions. I mean, based on experience, I mean, buyers should always ask questions because there would be a lot of things that you would miss or you don't know about. So, but once you ask questions, you ask your realtor, ask your mortgage guy, those questions will definitely be explained to you and be answered by them. Um, so while we move forward, do we have other questions? Oh, when is the best time to buy? I think the best time to buy it was yesterday actually. We should have bought like last year or 2 years ago. But I mean, jokes aside, so now is the best time to buy. You now is the always the best time to buy. it depends. In the beginning, I spoke about the why you want to buy. What's the reason behind why you want to buy? You want to build equity, you want to have stability, you want to take the advantage for like the tax advantage, or you want to make this a long-term investment. You want to know why you want to buy. That's the first thing. So now is actually the best time to buy because the houses that was bought in 2020, now those houses have really gone up. People that are selling at the moment, they are really making a lot of returns, a lot of profit at the moment because they took the opportunity to buy at that time. And if you would ask me, was it even wise to buy at that time? Because those times were like people were scared, they were like selling their houses. In fact, they said that the war is gonna end. But people took their chances to buy even at that time. So now is actually the best time for you to buy. I don't know if that's clear. All right. Do we have more questions? More questions? More questions? Are we open to questions? So I mean, I wanted to ask questions. I wanted to ask Brian questions that what should the buyers like what's the range or the price that the buyer should prepare for the inspection fee? Like just an is an idea. Yeah.
So the inspection fee is on a property type basis. In essence, like what a condo goes for is not going to be the same price as a single family. If anything, a condo is going to be cheaper, or at least what I charge. Uh, because obviously, again, a single family home, you're looking at attic, basement, first floor, second floor. Again, you have large houses, small houses, condos, one bedroom, two bedroom, a bathroom, and just a single floor. But nonetheless, I can type it in the chat as well, so everybody has a chance to look at it. But I charge $295 for condos, $425 for townhouses, $525 for single families, and then $625 for multifamilies. Starting at two family, then there's always the again difference because what a 900 square foot single family home is not going to go for the same price as a multi-million dollar property up in Warren or something, right? So it's always on a case by case basis, but those are my base prices. And again, the home inspection for the property includes the radon test and the termite inspection already. So that's all included in the price. Then the tank sweep and sewer scope, when you bundle it with the home inspection, they're normally 275, but when you bundle it, they're 200 each.
Thank you. Thanks so much for that. Yeah. I mean, those that missed it, if we can put in the chats for people to like take screenshots and just have those numbers because I've had experience of people once you tell them about the inspection price, they're surprised. So they thought maybe the only money you have to bring in is the down payment. No, there are other fees involved. I mean, Jimmy spoke about the appraiser, the you're gonna pay your attorney fees there as well, which is around between 1,000 to 1,800, depends on the attorney. So those fees are there, which you want to prepare for as well. So by the time you get the process started, you won't be surprised. Do we have more questions? Any questions? I mean, I believe that okay, we have one question. Someone rose up his hand. Olalade, you could go.
Good evening, everyone. So, I think I come in a little bit late. So, but I just want to ask, like, including the inspection, the lawyer fee, like, just to sum up everything, like, how much is it gonna cost to kind of probably to go for probably, yeah, let's say a single family or like a multi-family building, just like I mean, in sum up of everything, like an estimate for it.
Mm. So with that, it's like Brian said, so it's gonna be based on the the property specific, like it's gonna be based on the property. For instance, if you wanna like just let me just use an example of my past client I've worked with in the past. This is just gonna be an example, right? Because you wanna have an idea. The house was for 540. We closed on that house for, yeah, I think it was 545 or something. So the to have an idea, I wouldn't really be able to remember the specific numbers, but I know that the attorney fee was 800. Um, the inspection fee was around the price that Brian said. I think it was a single family was like I think five something. I can't remember exactly. And the other fees, which was the appraiser fee, I can't remember that as well. I can't remember the appraiser fee. But it would be around, I think it was like around 1200. The appraisal fee was around 1200. And yeah, so I mean basically I would say you should prepare, or like for instance you know your closing, I mean you know your down payment, you a first time home buyer, you want to your down payment is 3.5. I mean you will be able to definitely calculate that right away because 3.5 of the purchase price or the price that you'll be buying the home. Then after that you want to have at least Jimmy said like 2% to 3% for closing costs of that purchase price, 2% to 3% of closing costs. And after that, you want to at least have like extra 5,000, somewhere for all these other fees. For instance, the inspection, if you really want to do all the things, which is like important in case something happens, you want to be aware of these things, you want to do all these things. You want to keep like 5,000 aside apart from the down payment, the closing cost. You want to keep it like I would just say it's not going to be up to that, but I would say you should keep about 5,000 extra aside for any fee that comes up. So the only fee is not just the down payment, there are other fees also that are involved. I don't know if that answered your question.
Yes, that's good.
All right. So I believe not to just stress us out too much. So I mean this is something that we wanted to do just to show from the beginning to the end, because not so many realtors, not so many real estate agents do this to show their team. In fact, everyone on the call right now, I've worked with them. I've worked with Leslie, I've worked with Jimmy, the mortgage guy. I've worked with Brian, and we all, I mean, it was a great transaction. Everything came out really well. So these are my team. These are people that I've worked with that we can all work together if we can, we can, so that the transactions can be smooth. So I think someone put something in the chat. If a buyer is not able to pay the closing fee, with that amount be rolled up into the mortgage cost? Uh,
I can go
Jimmy.
ahead and answer that. So what happens is that can be negotiated. That is an option. However, the seller do have to agree. They call that seller's concession. There's a price that the seller needs to net. You can use the baked in appreciation that you have in this value from your appraisal and wrap that up with your closing costs. So that can be done. However, those conversations need to happen in the beginning. So when the appraiser comes out, he or she knows where to go with the purchase price versus the appraisal price. That is a great question.
Yes, and yes, that's a good question. Yes, thank you so much. So I mean, we have more questions. Please, I want actually I would like our panelists to put their contact in the chat. Please share your contact in the chat. If we have questions, please you can reach out and save those contacts. I'm also gonna put my contact in the chat, and if you would like me to have a one-on-one conversation with you as well, I would definitely love to do that and have a one-on-one conversation to explain everything that or every question that you might have. So, thank you so much, everyone, for joining. I mean, this is just a process, looks so easy and simple. I made it looks easy. I make it look easy and simple. Yes. So, thank you so much for everyone that joined. Thank you so much, Jimmy, the mortgage. Thank you, Leslie. Thank you, Brian. Thank you for coming. Thank you so much, guys, for joining. Really appreciate. Thank you very much. So, I mean, this comes to the end of the seminar. So the contacts are in the chat. Please take a screenshot if you have more questions. And also, I mean, if you guys can share your social media contact as well, I mean, that would be appreciated. I think Jimmy shared that, which is Jimmy.mortgage on Instagram and all other platforms as well. So you can ask questions. We all connected together and we work together. So thank you so much for everyone that joined. I mean, this is where we draw the line. If you have more questions, please send a message to us. I would be gladly to answer that. All right. All right, guys. Have a good night. Have a
Thank
blessed
you.
night.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you all.
All right,
Good night,
thank
Leslie.
you.
Good night, Brian. Good night,
Bye,
Adewale.
guys.
Good night, all.
Good night.